The Stanley Cup will be awarded for the 96th time sometime in mid-June. I'm joined by Ian McIntyre of the Vancouver Sun and Scott Stinson of National Post. We're going to ask the biggest question of all, gentlemen. Who will win the 96th Stanley Cup? Ian, let's start with you in Vancouver.
Well, I'm going to go with the New York Rangers, who were third in the NHL this season in scoring, third in defense. Last time a team was that good in both categories was the Vancouver Canucks in 2011, who went to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, coached, of course, by the same Alain Vigneault. And there's actually similarities between the teams, the Rangers now, what the Canucks were then. They have a great goalie, they have a young defense that's still going to get better, and they have a lot of speed and scoring depth up front. So I think the Rangers are going to be too much. Scott,
what about you? Do you share Ian's feelings about the Rangers?
I think the Rangers are a good pick. I'm going to go with the St. Louis Blues, and if you say why the St. Louis Blues, I would say why not the St. Louis Blues? I don't really, it's not one of those things where there's an obvious case to be made for why they're the team to beat. But I see them as a team with a lot of depth. They got lots of scoring, and guys like Tarasenko and Alex Steen, and now Paul Stastny is new there obviously this year. And they got a couple of good goalies. It's a team that could, I think, just hang around long enough and win some games. They're a team in St. Louis that typically has been good for a number of years, but just hasn't managed to do it in the postseason. And who knows, maybe this is the year when they finally pull it together.
Scott, and the strange thing about the Blues, of course, is that they went to the Stanley Cup Final in each of their first 3 seasons. The problem, of course, being that those were 1968, 1969, and 1970. So this is a team that's gone a long time, the longest of any NHL team without winning the Cup.
They are due, as the old saying goes.
I think the Blues are good too, but they are in a very tough bracket, and I'm not sure that they're going to have the goaltending, but they certainly have everything else but the goaltending. That's a question mark.
Yeah, I kind of see them as a team, you compare it to an Anaheim team that won a few years ago, where they came out of, they were a good team, and we all sort of said, well, I don't know if they have the goaltending, and then it turns out they had the goaltending, and it wasn't a guy who ended up being a big star in the league for years to come. But sometimes that's all it takes. A Cam Ward in Carolina, where they get hot for a little while and then they end up getting to the finals. I think that both Brian Elliott and Jake Allen could be that kind of guy for the Blues.
Ian, do you have a backup plan if the Rangers can't win this?
I like Chicago, and even though that Central Division, we're just talking about St. Louis, but with Chicago and Nashville and Minnesota, that's just a brutal bracket to be in. Chicago's going to get a turbo boost. They're going to get Patrick Kane back. I think there's this feeling that maybe they're past their best buy date, but their core players, they're still young. I mean, yeah, Hosa's 35. I think Patrick Sharp is 33, but you've got Jonathan Toews, who's 26. Duncan Keith is 31. Seabrook is 29. And Patrick Kane is only 26. You add Patrick Kane to that lineup, I think they could easily come out of the Western Conference.
Certainly not a club that's over the hill. Scott, what about you? If Blues can't do it, who's your backup pick?
I like coming into the East. I like Tampa Bay. I see them in the finals against St. Louis, and they're just a team that obviously has a lot of firepower with guys like Steve Stamkos, who everybody knows. They got a great goalie in Ben Bishop, who hasn't gone a long way before, but has that sort of potential to be a guy who can go a long way for them. I think the thing with Tampa Bay that I like is just the fact that they have this great home ice atmosphere now, and I think people don't realize that if you look over this season, Tampa Bay had the best home record in the league. So they've got this sort of extra advantage that I think maybe might surprise some people, that they play very well on home ice. And I think that's the kind of thing where if you get a lot of games that go close, they've got the scores that can ultimately, I think, prevail in these overtime games that tend to be so much of what we see in the Stanley Cup Playoffs.
Well, I know making predictions is a crapshoot, something you guys don't love to do, but I appreciate you taking the time today to share them with our viewers.
Cheers.